Welcome back, folks. Today is Wednesday, June 18th, 2025. Born on this date in 1937, writer Gail Godwin of Birmingham. She moved to North Carolina at a young age. In 1944, singer Sandy Posey of Jasper, if you remember Single Girl. And in 1965, actress Kim Dickens of Huntsville. Today, reporter John R. Roby is going to give us some of the latest news on President Trump's Golden Dome project and NASA's plans to get to the moon. Now, both those topics obviously affect defense industry firms in Alabama and Marshall Space Flight Center. First, we have the most American automobiles of 2025, by one measure. We have an Army base already rebranding, and a Congresswoman's bill targeting the growing doctor shortage. My name's Ike Morgan, and we're down in Alabama.
The NBA playoffs are here, and I'm getting my bets in on FanDuel. Talk to me, Chuck GPT. What do you know?
All sorts of interesting stuff, even Charles Barkley's greatest fear.
Hey, nobody needs to know that.
New customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. 21 plus and present in Virginia. Must be first online real money wager. $5 deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See full terms at FanDuel.com/sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
People once thought of American-made automobiles based on the automaker's name brand. Ford, Chevy, Dodge. As we well know here in the South, foreign companies have long made vehicles in America. They make them with parts that may be manufactured by vendors next door or halfway around the world. Well, it can be a bit much to keep up with if you're trying to settle on an American-made car or truck. Now, just how American is that F-150 or that Kia? For 20 years, Cars.com has been publishing an American-made index, which is intended to rank car models by just how American they are. Cars.com considers a model's assembly location, percentage of U.S. and Canadian parts, country of origin of available engines, country of origin of available transmissions, and its percentage of American employees. It turns out a single Alabama auto plant produces 3 of the top 10 most American vehicles for 2025, according to Cars.com's rankings. Coming in 7th, 8th, and 9th, respectively, the Honda Ridgeline pickup, Honda Odyssey minivan, and Honda Passport SUV, which are all built in Lincoln, Alabama. Also high in the rankings are the number 12 Honda Pilot SUV from the Lincoln plant, the number 18 Toyota Corolla Cross Hybrid SUV from Huntsville, and the number 26 Hyundai Santa Cruz pickup from Montgomery. And folks, you have to go all the way to number 22 to find the most American vehicle assembled in Michigan. That would be the Ford F-150 Lightning out of Dearborn. And which cars are the absolute most American? Well, Tesla makes the top 4 models, mostly in California, with number 1 being the Tesla Model 3. The Army's Fort Novosel is already undergoing its name change process back to Fort Rucker, reports AL.com's Heather Gann. President Biden's administration oversaw the renaming of Fort Rucker to Fort Novosel as part of a move away from southern forts carrying the names of Confederate officers. The fort had been named for Confederate Colonel Edmund Rucker. Then it was named for Army Aviator Chief Warrant Officer Michael J. Novosel, who had lived in nearby Enterprise. Last week, President Trump announced that several of the renamed installations will be reverting to their former names, including Fort Novosel. Now, while it will again be named Fort Rucker, this time it's in honor of World War I aviator Edward Rucker. The Army base is already in the process of updating signs and other material, it said in a release. There will be a renaming ceremony on a date that's yet undetermined. And population growth and an aging population are expected to greatly increase the demand for physicians over the next several years. Data from the Association of American Medical Colleges shows that the U.S. is expected to have a physician shortage of up to 86,000 by 2036. That's good news. If you're in med school right now, it means you'll get a few years' experience and then your opportunities will multiply. It's probably bad news for healthcare access and cost. With that in mind, Congresswoman Terry Sewell, a Birmingham Democrat, has joined Pennsylvania Republican Brian Fitzpatrick to introduce the Resident Physician Shortage Reduction Act of 2025. Reports AL.com's Heather Gann. Now, this legislation tries to tackle the doctor shortage by increasing the number of Medicare-supported medical residency positions by 14,000 over 7 years. More med students in, hopefully more physicians out. The Association of American Medical Colleges has said it supports the bipartisan measure. Let's take a quick break, come back, and talk with John R. Roby about missile defense and space. Y'all stay with us.
Hi, I'm Richard Karn, and you may have seen me on TV talking about the world's #1 expandable garden hose. Well, the brand new Pocket Hose Copperhead with Pocket Pivot is here, and it's a total game changer. Old-fashioned hoses get kinks and creases at the spigot, but the Copperhead's Pocket Pivot swivels 360 degrees for full water flow and freedom to water with ease all around your home. When you're all done, this rust-proof anti-burst hose shrinks back down to pocket size for effortless handling and tidy storage. Plus, your super light and ultra-durable Pocket Hose Copperhead is backed with a 10-year warranty. What could be better than that? I'll tell you what, an exciting exclusive offer just for you. For a limited time, you can get a free Pocket Pivot and their 10-pattern sprayer with the purchase of any size Copperhead hose. Just text WATER to 64,000. That's WATER to 64,000 for your 2 free gifts with purchase. WATER to 64,000.
By texting 64,000, you agree to receive recurring automated marketing messages from Pocket Hose. Message and data rates may apply. No purchase required. Terms apply. Available at pockethose.com/terms.
Hey, thanks for staying with us, everybody. Now, if the past week hasn't made you ponder missile defense, then I'm not sure what will. And also nationally, everybody's been debating budgets and deficits and cuts and things that will likely affect NASA and its Artemis program. Now, AL.com's John R. Roby covers North Alabama space and defense issues, and we have him back in the Down in Alabama virtual studio to bring us up to speed on how all that could affect our state. John, it's great to have you back here. How you doing?
Hey there, Ike. I'm doing very well, and it is a pleasure to be back with you.
Hey, we appreciate you taking the time. You know, we've watched Israel's missile defense successes really over the years, but recently, and along with a miss or two that had some pretty dire consequences. Do you think all the hot and heavy stuff that's going on right now lends a sense of urgency, or at least a stronger political will to President Trump's Golden Dome project?
I can guarantee you that folks in Washington and folks in the missile defense community are paying very close attention to what's happening there. Israel's sort of multi-layered missile defense systems are probably the best, well, certainly the best tested and fielded systems in the world. When anyone wants to see how missile defense might be working, Israel is where you look because, unfortunately, of all the conflict that has been happening there. And this is, I think, taken on added resonance because we're in a point now where President Trump's Golden Dome system, which is at least modeled in terms of language on one aspect of Israel's system, appears to be getting its first round of funding in next year's budget. So with what is playing out there in Israel right now, certainly there is urgency and great interest all over the community from that.
Sure. The first $25 billion of Golden Dome is supposed to be in next year's budget. Are we learning any more about what's going on in Huntsville, how their hands may be involved? I'm sure will be to some extent.
I think with everything so far with Golden Dome, we've had to preface by saying we don't know exactly what this is going to look like, and that is still the case by and large. We do know from things that President Trump has said that there is going to be a great focus on space-based detection and interdiction, perhaps. And we do know that it is designed to counter both the sort of common expected threat that exists in the world today and maybe more exotic threats that are more exotic right now, but could become more common in the future, talking about things like hypersonic missiles. We know that there is funding, and we know, unfortunately, that there seems to be some lack of clarity over where this money is going to go. So in other words, there's $25 billion that's been talked about. That's between sort of R&D and appropriation, and acquisition. But we don't really know what systems are going to be sort of favored initially here, because sort of the military branch budgets are still not in. So there's a lot of uncertainty about sort of where the money's going to go. And in fact, just recently there was to be a Missile Defense Agency event here in Huntsville aimed at contractors, specifically sort of small non-traditional contractors, to help them sort of navigate what the MDA is going to be looking for in terms of procurement for parts and systems for Golden Dome. And that was canceled suddenly, kind of at the last minute. And as you might expect from the Missile Defense Agency, there was not a whole lot of explanation of why that happened. So I think it continues to be a lot of sort of hurry up and wait over what exactly the funding here is going to do.
Yeah, and that's a perfect intersection for Huntsville, by the way, folks, is missile defense and space. I mean, it's just made for North Alabama. So as this goes, Alabama goes. I mean, economically and everything else, a huge impact here.
And it already has been. In fact, there a lot of the sort of initial development work that goes into multiple aspects of Israel's missile defense system were developed by companies either located in Huntsville or with significant presences here. So like Raytheon and Boeing, the THAAD missile system. I mean, all these things are tried and true to some degree under certain threat conditions in Israel, and relocate right back here in North Alabama.
Yeah, yeah. Going back to the old Strategic Defense Initiative of my childhood.
Our childhood, yes, sir.
Our childhood. Well, I don't want to date all of us, but
It's all right.
Going back there, the big criticism was always that it's just unrealistic, maybe too expensive. Well, what are some of the naysayers saying about Golden Dome? Is it getting some of the same pushback, or are there other things?
It certainly is. Now, if you go back to sort of the 80s, there are some estimates that say we've spent $250 billion on research and development and fielding various missile defense systems, of which we do have a handful that are designed, again, much like Israel, to counteract missile threats at different distances, at different altitudes, from different actors. They've primarily always been focused on, one big threat, the Soviet Union or Russia, right? But now China is a player there, and North Korea is also a player there, and there's some concern that Iran could be. These days, there are 36 or so countries that have access to ballistic missiles of various kinds. Now, as far as threats to the homeland, it's the big two really, plus North Korea. So China, Russia, North Korea. The criticisms are very similar as they were under President Reagan's Star Wars program. Missile defense, especially space-based missile defense, is technically incredibly difficult. It's not proven. It's incredibly expensive. It raises tons of geopolitical questions, questions about the weaponization of space, which is something that the United States has historically resisted. It upends the traditional way of thinking about nuclear deterrence, which is that we want to make nuclear weapons so dangerous that they are never used by one of the great powers. The flip side to that is the landscape today is very different. And what if you have an actor who is not so much concerned with their geopolitical standing, but they want to make a big splash, right? They want to. They're not afraid of deterrence. When you have that kind of threat that has to be thought of today, sort of more of a terrorism kind of threat. So I would say that the concerns, the technical concerns, the cost concerns are still very much there. With when you think about the missile arsenals of China and Russia, you would need so many space-based interceptors, which is why this initial thing under President Reagan was never really funded. You would need more. And something people don't, I think, realize is when you've got satellites and sort of space-based missile shoot-down programs, those things are not there for good. If you think about Starlink, the constellation that SpaceX is putting up, those satellites aren't there for the long term. They're there for maybe 5 years or so. They degrade. They have to be brought back down. They have to be, new ones have to be launched to fill the holes. The same thing would happen with these incredibly expensive, exquisite, Golden Dome missile interceptors, whatever they end up looking like. So it's a continuing cost. And when President Trump talks about $175 billion soup to nuts in 3 years, I've not seen anything that indicates that experts think that's realistic in any sense.
I just had a conversation with someone about buying starter homes yesterday, and what a $200,000 home cost today. I don't think there's any way you could say something like this is going to stay in a long-term budget, in any long-term budget. That just seems wild.
Yeah. It does, certainly.
Well, I don't want to leave too much on the table there, but we want to talk about NASA a little bit as well. Talk about this year's budget, what might be in store for Huntsville, as well as NASA overall.
We got sort of the news last month, which was kind of telegraphed by the White House earlier in the year when they sort of outlined what they were looking for in terms of this year's NASA budget request. Became official last month, and the news for North Alabama was a little bit concerning. The Trump administration wants to basically phase out two of the key programs that are run by the Marshall Space Flight Center here in Huntsville. And these are programs that are also pretty much key to getting us to the moon and back safely. So we're talking about the Space Launch System and Orion, which is the crew capsule. So NASA is at the very beginning of a long-term plan to fly a series of missions to create a permanent American human presence on the moon. And this is the Artemis program. Now, the Space Launch System is this enormous, not reusable rocket system that has been successful at taking us around the moon in the Artemis 1 mission back in 2022. And that's the system that is run from Marshall, and a lot of the work is done there by folks there. And Marshall, as the sort of center for human spaceflight for NASA, is deeply involved in this. And there's enormous amounts of economic benefit here for Huntsville based on this program. President Trump's budget is, as part of a large, historically large cuts to NASA, wants to phase out SLS and Orion after the Artemis 3 mission. That's the one that's going to actually land folks on the moon again for the first time in a generation. It's unclear what's going to happen after that, because right now, with getting to the moon before China being a stated policy goal of the United States, there is one system that has done that, and that is SLS, right? SpaceX doesn't have anything that can launch directly into lunar orbit. Blue Origin doesn't have it. United Launch Alliance doesn't have it. So the Trump administration is basically saying, we're going to fund this up to the point where we put boots on the lunar ground, hopefully before China. And then after that, it's up to private industry. And that's a huge question mark right now.
Yeah, well, if it's my boots that are on the ground, I want to know somebody's coming back for me.
I think that's the idea, right? That's the permanent part of the permanent human colony, which is, this kind of thing has to be sustainable, and it has to be repeatable. And without SLS, the thinking appears to be there will be a private industry solution by the time this is a problem, which we're looking at about a 3-year timeline right now, or at least before 2030, which is when the thinking is China would have the capability to land on the moon before us.
Yeah, and I'm sure that Elon Musk bent Trump's ear over what these private companies can do, and probably will do one day. But we also it was really important that we get to Mars. If we end up not having that base on or colony or whatever you want to call it on the moon, I could see that affecting. Does that affect the Mars plans or thoughts?
It could. Depends on who you talk to. If you talk to Elon Musk, he will tell you that he'd rather launch straight from Mars, which he seems to think could be done with more or less existing technology. I think that the moon is useful as a staging base. It gives us more options, right? It opens it up to sort of more and more frequent trips to Mars, but also the fact that right now nobody but us is talking about Mars. China is talking about the moon, and this is why there is, I think, a lot of interest in certainly in Congress to make sure that we have fast and sustainable and repeatable methods of getting there. So we have people like Senator Ted Cruz, who is from Texas, where, of course, the Johnson space flight, NASA's Johnson Center is, saying, hold on, Mr. President, we're friends and all, but we need to keep funding NASA. We need to keep SLS funded well, because this is the way that we're going to beat China.
Right. That's a great point, because so much of what we're doing now is with an eye on China. How is China in this market? How are they on the moon? That's an outstanding point. Well, what are we leaving on the table? What else did I need to ask you about that's going on in Huntsville?
Going on in Huntsville? Well, I tell you what, if you want to talk about soccer, our team is doing all right.
Oh, bring it! Which soccer team?
So Huntsville City FC is having a pretty good season. It's a good time out. But no, I'd say as far as space and defense, NASA, and despite all this retrenchment that the budget's calling for, NASA is looking to expand its footprint up here on Redstone Arsenal. This is kind of breaking news as of today, but I'm reporting that the agency is looking to build a new building at its campus on Redstone. $45 million structure to replace one that was brought down by controlled demolition back in 2022 because it had outlived its usefulness. But NASA is now looking to reestablish a sort of a centerpiece for its campus there, which, if you're thinking about cuts and retrenchment, at least this is an indicator that they are looking to the future, where there is still a lot of important work to be done at Martian.
Yeah, that's investment beyond this year's budget. Because one concern I would have over NASA hoping to walk back any cuts is that there's now a lot of concern over the budget deficit that we're still going in despite all the cuts. But that's all Washington politics stuff, but it obviously affects us in the short term. But it's good to hear that there. I want to read this. I will look for it at al.com, and we'll link to it in the show notes here.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, John, have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much for stopping by. You'll come again, right?
Oh, absolutely, Ike. Any old time.
Okay. Yeah. Any open invite. We appreciate it. And thanks everybody out there for listening to us. We're going to be back here again in the morning. Until then, y'all come by and see what we're doing anytime you want to on the internet at al.com.